From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC podcast, episode number 375. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host and fellow NLSC team member is Derek. You know him in the forum as Deeper3, and he is Deeper384 on Twitter.
I'm happy to be here again. Just so the audience knows, Andrew and I have spent a ton of time playing NBA Live 10 this week. If you haven't seen the videos on YouTube or the ones that we've been putting on Twitter, we've been using Parsec. And also we tried Steam Play together, which is just kind of a nightmare in itself, which we'll get into. But we've been using Parsec to connect. And we're on different parts of the world, so I'm surprised it works as good as it does. But yeah, a lot of time spent with NBA Live 10 this week.
It's been good. It's kind of made it my new retro jam, actually. I'm really into Live 10 at the moment now.
The gameplay holds up nicely. I enjoy the gameplay more than Live 19.
Yeah.
I think it's more free. You don't have all the canned animations that Live 19 has. The passing feels more responsive. I enjoy the lighting and graphics a little bit more, actually, in Live 10 as well, in the atmosphere. So it's been really nice to revisit it, and we've actually had some pretty good games as well. And it's really fun, like I showed you, putting the highlights together. It's just really fun, after a session, quickly putting those highlights together and watching them, because you can just see a lot of good things with the game. You can see a lot of good gameplay elements and a lot of fun that was being had, executing and whatnot.
And we've gotten some nice comments from them as well. We've shared them on our Twitter accounts. We've shared it on YouTube, both your YouTube and the NLSC YouTube, which we will be promoting during the course of the show. And also in the forum, we have a thread in the NLSC Hub and also the NBA Live 10 section in the video and media thread, I believe it is. We've been sharing it there, and a few people have been commenting on it. And it's nice. I mean, obviously, retro content, it's an acquired taste. Not everybody likes to go back as we do. We've talked about that before, about how you and I do like to go way back, and that's why I'd like to do Way Back Wednesday, and it's why we do a feature like this. But it has been fun to not just go back and to try something new with Parsec, which, as you said, we'll be getting into this episode, and test that out and play an old classic, but also to create some content for it as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried quite a few other games as well. Seems to, NBA Live 10 works the best, which is odd, in my opinion. I'm not sure why it does. But it seems like NBA Live 10 runs the best on Parsec. But yeah, we want to bring more content to the community, more gameplay from classic games. I know that a lot of people really enjoy, my Live 2001 video got quite a few views. A lot of people enjoy those older Live titles and 2K titles and basketball titles in general. So it'd be nice to get it to work really well on those older titles so we can bring more gameplay to the community.
So we will be getting into that a bit later on in the show. That will be our feature discussion this week as we talk about our adventures with Parsec. But we do want to touch on some news first, and it's non-news, really. But in that respect, it's also news because, of course, it generates clickbait. And that is, of course, that EA Play is returning this year, which is EA's, it's basically like their E3. It's their yearly event. Of course, the pandemic has put a kibosh on that last year, but it is coming back this year. Well, actually, they did have it last year, didn't they? It was just virtual, wasn't it?
They did. They had it. Yeah, it was just virtual. Yeah, so because remember, they were showing off, I want to say, was it Tony Hawk? I don't know if it was them that showed that out. But people were talking about some of the games they were disappointed in not seeing at the last show last year.
I suppose that's relevant because as far as our community goes, obviously we've been talking a lot about the return of NBA Live, or what we'd like to see, a return of NBA Live, and people have noted that the titles that are listed for EA Play 2021 do not include NBA Live, so that has obviously led to speculation as to the future again. Obviously, this is something that we've covered a lot, Derek, and we don't want to repeat ourselves too much to cover too familiar ground here, but we do have some confirmation. As it stands at the moment, there is no NBA Live listed for EA Play 2021, so not necessarily something to expect, but again, is this something that we should worry about?
Yeah, all of a sudden you see videos coming out that say NBA Live 22 release date.
the clickbait's coming, yeah.
On it, yeah, and then I'm not going to do my Jay Leno impression again, but just talking over it. But people click on the video and they interact, and then they, I don't know. I think people are just now loving clickbait, it seems. They just love to click on those videos and go in there, and even if the video says nothing, they just, they don't even call it out. They don't go, hey, there's no release date for NBA Live 22. Anyway, so yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it's not showing up. I will say, though, I'm sticking with my guns here. I still think we're going to get an announcement. I don't know why. I feel like we're still going to get NBA Live 22, whether it's whether it comes later in the year, or the announcement comes later in the year or whatnot. I still think that we're going to get it, and at the very latest, Live 23. But I don't see them waiting another year before releasing. I think we're going to get something this year, but I could be wrong. It's just my opinion.
I mean, we're certainly hoping for good news, as we've said before. We want to have the choices. We want to have competition in the space. We want to have viable choices. We've seen what happens when one company has a monopoly. Madden fans can tell you all about the problems with just one game coming out. So we do want to see NBA Live return. I feel less optimistic. I mean, I certainly would have felt more optimistic if I'd seen a mention of the game being there. It could, as you say, it could be that there's an announcement, a teaser, a preview, rather than the game being heavily shown or featured. So it is possible, but again, that is not confirmed. So anybody saying that it is purely speculating or BSing, as the case may be. Yeah, it's one of those things that until I see an actual announcement, it's going to be hard to get particularly excited. I think I'm feeling a bit more cynical than you are at the moment. And of course, we talked last week about the situation with Luka Doncic.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Luka Doncic thing didn't surprise me, because if he's approached by 2K, he's one of the most popular players in the world right now. They're probably going to make him a cover athlete for 2K22. That's my prediction. It makes sense for them. If Doncic gets approached by 2K, what is he going to do? He's going to break his contract with EA. So that doesn't surprise me. And then this news, what if they don't believe they're going to be able to make the impression they want, right? After another couple years layoff of not releasing games. So, yeah, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be released. Is it a sign that it could not be released? Yes. But I don't think it's dead in the water. Like I said, if you're EA and you don't believe that you have anything to show off for NBA Live, and if anything looks off, would you want to show it at that point?
It would be disastrous, I think, at this point, because we've seen that.
Disaster.
Yeah. We've seen it over the past generation when they've failed to impress, and they've come out with something at formerly E3 and now EA Play, their own event, and people said, oh, looks like the same old stuff, and then the demo comes out, and there's a little bit improvement, but it's still basically the same game that hasn't really swayed us from 2K. So, and we've talked about this before, how we believe that Live does need to make that big splash on its return, how it does need to impress. We can't expect it to have absolutely everything we want, but it does need to impress.
Yeah, exactly. And what I think I would like to see, just to get the hype started, just to get people talking, just to get people to, cling on to something, it would be nice for like a little teaser video, right? So no, it's not fully at EA Play, but maybe they do like a 10-second graphic, right? Like a quick 10-second video that says the return or something like that. I don't know.
A logo flashes up. Yeah, the NBA Live.
Or a logo flashes up, yeah, and then gets people talking on social media. Oh, it's coming back. Oh, they're working on it. And that would be a good way for people to get pumped up to start the hype without possibly breaking people's, like they see something they don't like. You know what I mean? Like they see a part of the game, they're like, oh, this doesn't look as good as I was hoping, or oh, Live's dead already, and stuff like that.
It's not showing their cards straight away. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that's what I would like to see, and who knows? By the way, that could happen. Who knows?
Well, to that point, the B-Ball Pundit at B-Ball Pundit on Twitter, shout out to you, has actually submitted a mailbag question which is relevant to this topic, so we'll answer it here. Asks, do we think we'll see Live 22 at EA Play? I think if we do see it, it's going to be, as you say, that little teaser, a logo flashes across the screen, coming soon, or as you say, the return, and just NBA Live 22 or just NBA Live, something like that, just hinting at the future, because we have seen them obviously hiring people, which like Scott O'Gallagher, which would seem very unlikely if they weren't putting the effort into into making a console NBA Live, not just NBA Live Mobile. I mean, he could be working on other things, but why you'd hire a basketball mind for another project seems ridiculous. And you could say, oh, well, EA's makes some strange decisions sometimes. I don't think that's strange. I think they still kind of put the personnel, if they're going to hire people from 2K who've been working on NBA 2K, it is going to be to work on NBA Live. So I think if we see anything at EA Play, it is going to be just that teaser, a flash, a snippet, a mention, maybe if somebody asks about it, that there might be somebody might hint at its future, somebody who's interviewed might speak on it. So we might have a presence in that respect, but I'm not expecting to see a big trailer, gameplay footage, big previews, anything like that. I mean, I could be wrong, and it could blow us away, and that would be amazing. But I'm going to keep my expectations low and think it's probably just going to be a teaser like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think the expectations are for me, that they are going to say nothing. Like, that's what I expect, right? You saw the lineup of games. Maybe they say nothing. Again, that doesn't mean that they're not going to release anything, and that doesn't mean that because EA Play isn't the end all, right?
Oh yeah,
it's a showcase, but it's not an end all. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't mean that I don't think we're going to be getting NBA Live 22. The Scott O'Gallagher move, the moves they made in general, the hiring for community managers, not related to NBA Live Mobile, all the signs point to them working on this for this gen of consoles, working on the NBA Live series. They said they were coming back. I believe that they're coming back. As we've talked about in the past, the last message that they had on their social media channel. What concerns me more, and I know I sound like a broken record, is the fact that they just don't talk about the series ever.
Yes.
Nothing.
Yes.
Hear nothing. And it is the silence is deafening. It is absolutely ridiculous. We have a silence on social media about a basketball series that has been around for 25 plus years and has released numerous titles, many very popular and still talked about fondly today, and you say nothing. You're not engaging in the community. You're not getting people to talk about the games, think about the games, having NBA Live in people's heads, etc. Nothing. And from a marketing perspective, from an outreach perspective, from a promotional perspective, it is ridiculous. They should be embarrassed. And we see this, how ridiculous it is on the ground. It's not this thing, well, they have nothing to promote. You don't just promote the newest game. You promote the brand, right? And the brand has a storied history. Sure, there's a lot of bumps in the road, but there's a lot of things they can talk about, engage people with in the community, ask questions on the most popular social media platforms instead of keeping all of this crap closed or closed discussions, etc., or only using one or two different platforms to do so. They should be active on Twitter. They should be active on Facebook. They should be active on Instagram. They should be putting gameplay videos out, etc. We're doing more to promote NBA Live we've done more to promote NBA Live in the past week than they have in 3 years.
I was going to say,
2 or 3 years.
With the 25th anniversary, I was doing the work for them. I was doing the retrospectives. Obviously, I'm going into some negatives as well, which they probably wouldn't want to promote, but I'm putting out the retrospective content, the other articles, media, and etc. I tagged them. I didn't expect retweets, and certainly didn't get them. I'll probably go into this at some point in the future as well with certain articles. But there was some change over with the community manager where the old crowd, I mentioned before on the podcast actually, we were all kind of shuffled out in favor of the new crowd, the YouTubers, whatever. So we weren't even getting retweets and things like that. I mean, they still follow the NLSC account, so if there's anybody monitoring it, they would see the tag presumably. But again, yeah, I was doing the work for them as far as having some 25th anniversary content. All they needed to do was retweet it.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, is I don't think they have the right minds on that team, on the marketing team, on the promotional side. Do they have any minds on it? Or is there anybody out there right now? It's really crazy, right? Like, Is anybody monitoring that channel, handling that channel on Twitter right now?
They
Are they doing anything?
Don't seem to be doing anything now.
Like, so how do you do that? How do you go from 25 plus years of making basketball video games, having the NBA license and, paying the respects to retro in some of the past titles and, like having some of the biggest artists in music, on your soundtracks. And, you have, all these innovations, you have the right stick dribbling and the things that you came up with first, and you were the first to have the WNBA and an NBA title and all that stuff. So how do you go from all of that to nothing, to no promotion, no brand promotion, no talking about any of it? It's just, I don't know. I talked to, somebody said to me recently, they said in the comments, like, you should work for, they should hire you at 2K because, I was just talking about some of my issues with their design choices and the gambling mechanics and all of that stuff. And, how I feel a lot of that takes advantage of people. And I said to that person, I said, there is no way in hell, and it doesn't matter what my expertise are, to be honest with you. There's no way, if let's say I was a great program coordinator, or I had coding skill, or like I was like a leftos or something like that, where I had, the ability to, do all this stuff internally with the games and everything. It doesn't matter what my skills are. I'm too honest. And I've probably burned bridges both with 2K and EA Sports, because who would want to work with somebody who just said what I said about EA Sports, right?
But even then, even putting that aside, even if you want to say, okay, he's critical as these guys are critical in their role as content creators in the community. Even if we get there and they're all willing to accept us for our attitudes and our previous comments and everything, we're still at the mercy of the executive producer, at the suits that are higher up than the executive producer. If that is not if you don't have free reign to implement those ideas, if there are politics, and we do believe there are, behind player ratings, it doesn't really matter. If the approach is to sell these overpowered cards that don't really respect history or accuracy, but they're desirable content to have because they're powerful to have, it doesn't really matter. You can have all the knowledge and the skill and the passion in the world, but if the vision isn't lining up with that, it doesn't really matter.
Right, exactly. And see, that's part of the problem too, and that's been one of the biggest problems with NBA Live in the recent past, not just the recent past, like 13 years ago, 14, 15 years ago. The suits are not only not putting the right people in the right places to work on the games, but they're also not giving them the appropriate time, resources, and possibly money. I don't know that side of it, but I'm guessing that could be part of a problem. I'm not sure.
Possibly, yeah.
They're not putting the time, resources, and money into the NBA Live series. And the people that are working on the series, no matter how passionate they are about basketball, if the suits have a certain direction for them to go into, or they only approve certain aspects of the game, then, certain modes, certain depth, etc., then they're strapped. So yeah, we have that problem. And I'm not saying that I should work for EA or 2K. I'm not saying that I would. I'm working on some things myself right now. Like, I'm not saying that, if I ever wanted to, and I think you can agree with this, I think if I ever could work for either EA or 2K, I think it would be EA, just because I'd want to be a part of something great, like something new, exciting, fun, something like growing. Bringing NBA back, like it would be like this story. Like, remember, I'm a big fan of the Rocky movies.
Obviously, there'd be opportunities at 2K as well, but as you say, you'd have the opportunity to be on the ground floor of this comeback of this storied franchise.
Right, exactly. It feels like Rocky jumping in the ring with Apollo Creed, the champ. You know what I mean? Not given a chance and taking him the distance. Like, it's that type of situation. So I think there's an exciting aspect of, being on that sort of team and, being part of that story. But yeah, anyway, the point is that the silence is deafening. We even had an entire episode about that.
Titled that.
And I think they can do better. Yeah, they can do better. And they can do a lot better. But they need to do something. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
That's the thing.
And as for EA Play, I think we're both keeping our expectations low. At this point, it doesn't look like anything is scheduled, anything more than a possible teaser. But my advice to people would be to not get your hopes up, basically, at this point, because nothing is announced. It's not there in any of the upcoming titles. Doesn't mean that the plans won't change. So look, I'll gladly eat my words on this if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, it could mean good things for NBA Live, great things perhaps. So I certainly don't mind being proven wrong when when it's good news. But yeah, I think we should keep our expectations, temper them for now.
Yeah, and that's healthy. I'll say again, though, as far as expectations, I do expect them to release a title this year, so we'll see what happens.
So from a title that may or may not come to a title that has been and is back in our rotation, NBA Live 10. We've been playing that head-to-head over Parsec, and it's been pretty fun for the most part. I know I've had my frustrations at times as we've been trying to work out the lag, but we've got it working pretty well, and we've had some pretty good games over the past week, and you've put together some highlights, and you put together a package which I uploaded to the NLSC's YouTube channel as well and shared on our social media. So we're going to reflect a little bit on that because it has been an adventure.
I've loved it. And I do want to say, even though there's a little bit of lag on your end, it still plays far better than that NBA 2K21 game that we played over when it first came out for PC.
Oh, with Steam, yeah.
That's just absolutely terrible. The way that felt, how sluggish it was, the delay, all of that stuff. So Parsec is gold. And I just want to say that the fact that Andrew is on the other side of the world and he can connect to my computer. I'm the host when we do this. And we can legitimately play games right from my desktop, and it works pretty good. A good majority of the time. That's just impressive. And the fact that, I can take highlights, screenshots, all of that stuff just adds a whole new element to content creation. And I wish that we had actually tried it earlier. Like last year or something like that. But I recommend Parsec to anybody, and I think you would as well. It's really easy to get set up. It takes like 5 minutes to download and just like tweak the settings to what they need to be. So yeah, Parsec's great. But NBA Live 10 has been the go-to game. And the more I play it, the more like I alluded to at the start of the podcast, the more I play it, the more I think it might be... hard to say. It might be my favorite NBA Live game, gameplay-wise, over the last 15 years, 16, 17 years.
No,
it might be the gameplay maybe ever for Live.
It was definitely up there, and it was Mike Wong was a big part of it. Beluga was a big part of it because that was his last game. He worked on 09 and 10, and they had they just did a tremendous job with Live 10, basically. And it's a shame that it lost further sales to 2K because from what I've heard, the direction for Elite 11 was already in place. But if it had done better, I think maybe they might have looked at that and said, okay, let's hold off on that for a year. Let's just polish that a little bit in the background. Let's see where this goes first, because this has done really well. This has been really well received. And it was well received, but it did sell less than 2K10 that year. So... yeah, it's another one of those what-if situations. We've talked about that before on the podcast. The Live 06 the other week, what if that was, and Live 10 the other turning point, and Elite 11, and so you just see these points in the series where, if for want of a nail, for want of a better decision, Live could still be with us today and thriving.
I got to say, NBA Live 10, in comparison to NBA 2K10, I actually am enjoying Live 10 quite a bit more right now. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. One, both games have great atmosphere, but from a gameplay standpoint, that right stick dribbling on NBA Live 10 is really good. I mean, it's really good. Like the control, the moves we were pulling off, like in the last game that we played, me using rookie Steph Curry and, backing up and, crossing over one way and then quickly going the other way and getting in between the seams of the defense and stuff like that. There is such a major gap with feel and control from a ball handling perspective on NBA Live 10 over NBA 2K10 that it makes just such a wild difference for me from an enjoyment aspect. I also think that the post game is on par on NBA Live 10 as 2K10, and I think that overall the graphics are, just as good, really. I mean, I don't see a problem with NBA Live 10's graphics at all. So they definitely did a good job there. But man, what a difference that right stick dribbling does for feel, right?
It really does. I mean, I've talked before about
And
how.
they had size, hold on a second. And, they had size ups. You and I are using them constantly
Absolutely,
on those highlight videos. And the fact that they have size ups in Live 10, and they don't really have size ups in NBA 2K10, it's another element that Live had that 2K didn't, that really adds to that authenticity and that feel. And then like I've said it so many times, NBA Live 19 comes out and you don't have size up. It's just size ups like, hey guys, let's go backwards. Hey, why not, right? Let's not give people a feature that they had, 9 years ago. But anyway, yeah, continue. It's been playing NBA Live 10 and playing against you too, which is fun because, we're not cheesing the game or anything like that. But playing NBA Live 10 has been fun, like revisiting it has been kind of an eye opener because this is the most I played it in a long time.
Same. Apart from getting screenshots for articles, or I went back last year when I did the my retrospective of it because I wanted to fresh in my mind and double check various features and get some screenshots as well, but certainly to get some hands-on impressions because it had been a while. And you do go back to these games, and I have found, because I was really sticking with the PC at that time, so I didn't spend as much time with the 360, which is where I originally played these games on. I do have the PS3 versions now because I'm a mad collector like that. But playing them again, I am noticing things that I didn't before and giving them a chance. And even some of the rougher titles, I'm seeing good things in them. By Live 10, they were getting a pretty good amount of polish. As you say, the size-ups are there. Then 2K brought them in 2K11 because Mike Wong went back to 2K that year, took that idea back with him. So we're seeing great ideas like that. Isomotion in 2K was the big hurdle for me. I did get used to it in 11 and 12, and I can play those games now and enjoy them, being more used to the feel of 2K. But when I do go back to them, I guarantee you that I'm gonna launch a shot from half court because I'm gonna hit that stick and it's gonna fire a shot because I want to dribble with it. Right stick dribbling, I think, is just such a huge innovation for basketball games when they brought it in with freestyle in Live 2003. And it really did, they call it a revolution, and it's one of those, that's a gimmick, that's marketing, but it really was revolutionary. So I really did miss it trying to adjust to 2K. So going back to Live 10, I'm really appreciating how it feels. The presentation, obviously, the plays and even the jerseys at the time, although you and I have been using a lot of throwback jerseys when we've played as well. But the game has felt pretty good, even with dealing with the lag, obviously. And the games have come out. I think that reflects it. I think it reflects how fun it's been for the most part for us, and of course how we play basketball games. And as I said at the top of the show, it's nice to get some positive comments that people are saying, "Oh, I love this ball movement. I love these plays. This looks pretty real for a game released over a decade ago. The way you're playing it, and it's refreshing. It's obviously there are other people who feel as we do about basketball games and the style and how to play them." And it's nice. It's nice to know that we're not, we may be in the minority, but we're certainly not alone.
Yeah, a couple things I want to say. First off, how funny was it when we tried to put on NBA Live 2006 there, and we were rifling full court shots and taking floater threes because we were hitting the wrong buttons. Mm-hmm. People, it's really tough to jump from playing one of the 2Ks or NBA Live 10 and then go back and play Live 2004 or 5 or 6.
Game, yeah, it's tough.
Oh God, yeah. You start you're hitting the wrong input. You're throwing alley-oops when you don't want to. You're chucking up threes with the wrong button, etc. So that was interesting when we tried to do that.
Well, even Live 10, because the defensive assist is on the right bumper or R1, which is very different to L2 or the left trigger in other games, including more modern games. So there's a lot of, if you see us, me in particular, bringing up icon passing for no reason in those videos, it's because I'm forgetting that it's actually R1 for defensive assist and defensive stance, and I'm used to using a more up-to-date control method.
Yeah, I think the inputs being slightly different, but overall I like the placement of buttons and how NBA Live 10 works. I prefer it over Live 04 and whatnot for button mapping overall. And I really appreciate the one shoot button. So
Yes,
that,
works
that's
out a lot
good.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, shoot button, dunk button, all the same button. It just works a lot better. It makes you be able to run things quicker, react quicker, all of that stuff. The comments on the gameplay have been fantastic. I think that the game that worked the best when we were playing is probably the Celtics-Lakers finals, um, game that we played, and definitely a lot of good highlights on that one. I really enjoyed getting in between the seams with Rondo and kicking it out for KG for his mid-range shots and kind of sizing you up with KG and you looking for Pierce off screens and getting him involved from beyond the arc and everything and then you put in 26 points with me, 26 points on me with Kobe, and Pagasaw was hurting me inside. He went for 13 and 7. There's just a lot of you did a good job of using Fisher as well. He had a couple shots in the first half that were nice. Yeah, it's been fun. And I encourage our listeners to go onto the Twitter handles and check out those highlights, or go on my YouTube and then also the NLSC YouTube and take a look at them, because, I think there's a lot of good basketball going on. A lot of driving and kicking, posting up, facing up in the mid-range, stuff like that. It's been fun.
And obviously, you and I, we have a lot of nostalgia for the 90s and maybe the early 2000s, as far as when we were growing up and coming of age as young adults and teenagers and whatnot. But we're so far past the early 2010s and the late 2000s now that there's a kind of nostalgia for the rosters of that time as well. And I think that's been fun to play with those rosters again. And it's added to the experience of, obviously... And look, I've talked about this in Way Back Wednesday so many times. I know it's become a cliche for me to say it, but these games are like interactive almanacs that you can go back and play history and play with these old rosters. So you're not just experiencing video games from the time, but also the NBA at the time as well. Obviously, we have retro rosters, which are awesome for current titles and recent 2K releases and retro teams every year. But to actually go back and play with a game that holds up pretty well as well, it's harder to go back too far. Sometimes you go too far and they don't hold up as well. But to play a game that holds up well and to play with those rosters, it's a double hit of nostalgia with both the NBA and basketball gaming.
It really is, and we both agree that it was a much better time for the NBA.
We feel that way, yes.
Competition, from a competition, talent perspective, from a style perspective and whatnot. So seeing those names and using those teams, it feels incredibly classic now for us because it's over a decade ago. Jumping on the court with a baby Curry is really fun. Him running the floor with Monta Ellis and Corey Maggette, a good paper team. Very good on paper team. You rolling out the Bobcats and Gerald Wallace and Boris Dia basically being your best players, and Raja Bell going off and whatnot. It's a fun time. It was a fun time being an NBA fan. It's a fun time to revisit. And I agree, video games are definitely like basketball almanacs, and that's why I get so frustrated sometimes with NBA 2K21 and the most recent 2Ks, where they just give that lack of attention to detail and respect to the classic NBA teams and the all-time teams and whatnot by rolling out rush jobs on signatures, attributes, tendencies, etc. And the players don't play right on the floor because it's like you said, an almanac. It's almost like a history lesson, right? And you want to form the right impression and pay the proper respects with that content because it will be revisited over and over and over again, and it makes a lot of impressions. So yeah, it's really cool to go back and play with those rosters. One thing I want to say, too, about Live 10 is, and people might, be like, oh, really? But remember, I'm not an EA fanboy, and I'm definitely not an NBA Live fanboy. I have been so critical of that series. It is ridiculous. But NBA Live 10 gameplay holds up easily today. As in, I have more fun recently playing NBA Live 10 by quite a bit than 2K21 recently. Because there's less exploits. The pace. I can't just go wide, you know what I mean, to finish on the break. Your defenders don't just move out of the way. The paint is easy to score in for the most part, but at least help tries to come over, and it's not just a free reign on attacking the basket. Ball movement, you can see it in the videos, ball movement is often required, right? We can't just ISO. We have to move the ball. So sure, the game is 10, 11 years old, but from a gameplay perspective, from a feel perspective, from getting out there and, getting on the virtual hardwood and whatnot, I'm enjoying it more than 2K21, and that's why I'm playing it more.
But these games look ancient, Derek. Who would want to play these? According to...
Get out of here. No, see, and the thing, too, is it holds up well. It holds up well graphically.
It does.
Also, I need to point, and I think you can agree with this, and I've talked about it so many times. And by the way, this is the main reason why my YouTube channel has as many subscribers as it does. The quality of gameplay when you're playing against another human far exceeds the quality when you're playing against the computer, because it's two human minds at work going at each other, strategizing, making plays that the computer would never make. So when playing defense, they wouldn't play it, making plays on offense that the computer wouldn't make, whether it be ball movement or certain drives or a combination of moves, shots that the computer wouldn't take that you would take, etc. It's why the gameplay looks so good, human versus human. It's also why it's also why it's the best way to play, right? I mean, you can't tell me that playing against the computer is as fun as playing against a human.
I mean, I like franchise modes, the way, and kind of building my team and when that. So I do kind of like the overall experience there, but there is something about the multiplayer experience that, again, you're not dealing with the cheese. You are dealing with another human mind, obviously, and this is the idea behind online team play is that we get that, but it's been different, obviously. And I mentioned this on Twitter. It's been very different playing with you, a friend, than playing with randoms online, with and against randoms online, because we will have sportsmanship. There was a situation where I needed to pause the game to tell you something, and you kept on pausing because you didn't know what I was doing. We weren't on chat at the time, so I got a 5-second violation. So you said, I'll...
DeRozan injury. It was the DeRozan injury. You wanted me to take a screenshot.
That's right,
of it.
yeah. So I asked, you offered, you said, I'll just give you the ball back. So you got a 5-second violation, basically reset the game. When something like that happens, or we get screwed over by the game some way, you don't have that sportsmanship online usually, unless you are playing with a friend. You can't really do things like that, and it's like, you got screwed over by the game, well, I'm going to take advantage of that. And competitively, I mean, that is fair enough, but at the same time, you can have that friendlier experience while still being very competitive. And you have more experience, especially recently, playing human versus human. So there is a reason on top of everything else. I will cede to you here and say that you are the superior head-to-head player in this respect. Which is why you are 4-0 in our showdown so far. But it's been fun. Obviously, I had that moment of frustration in that game. I'm glad we finished it, because Raja Bell, his heroics, his Larry Bird-like heroics.
People need to realize that. People need to realize it's okay for this stuff to happen. That's what makes it great. That's what creates video game legends. Next time you use Raja Bell, I'm going to have to guard him. I'm going to have to get up close.
It may never happen again. But even if it never happens again, what a cool story for us to tell here. What a cool experience that was. I'm laughing at some of those shots I'm making, like, I should not be making these shots. And... we're chatting back and forth about it, instant messaging back and forth about it. Yeah, it was just so crazy to see. And again, like you say, it becomes one of those video game legends. This moment of Raja Bell, much like I look back at my Live of 6 Dynasty with the Bulls. I had a game where Eric Piatkowski just went off in the fourth quarter and won the game for me, basically. Was able to just go off with him and hit a bunch of threes. So I gave him the start the next game, just to, because I felt you deserve it. You're a virtual player, you don't have a brain, but I'm going to give this to you. And it was kind of like that. Yes, I'll use the Bobcats again, maybe. And if I do, well, next time I play with them against the CPU or whatever, I'll put up some threes with Raja Bell and see if I can replicate that. But even if I don't, what an amazing and funny thing. And we've talked about that before, about just laughing. Obviously, we weren't on chat. We're not in the same continent, so we can't kind of be there on the couch laughing and joking with each other. But we did have that shared experience of seeing something ridiculous of Raja Bell going off like a Steph Curry mixed with Larry Bird with some of those threes he was making, and it didn't get me the win, but it was pretty entertaining to see from my end.
Well, it was funny because there was actually quite a few things that I really liked about that video. the Warriors versus Bobcats matchup. The Raja Bell thing happened when I was up by like 13 or 14, and I felt like it was getting out of hand. Then he hit like 3 ridiculous threes in a row. And it's like, it got you right back into the game, too. You got within like 7 or 5.
Within 3 at one point, yeah.
On the other, and yeah, 3, maybe even 3 at one point. So that was ridiculous. And then just that play where, I did a behind the back with Steven Jackson and kicked it out to Curry and hit that first 3 with him from real deep, and it just, like, the net exploded. That's just...
it's very Curry. It's very Curry-like.
Curry-like, just the way the ball went in, and then it went to the cutscene with him running back, and you see the babyface assassin right there. It's just like, that was really cool. And then, funny, we were talking about how Boris Dia was like your Barkley, like he was just unstoppable at the beginning of the game, and then all of a sudden he misses like 3 point-blank layups in the second half, like 2 or 3 of them. And it's like, oh, no, maybe he's not your best player.
Yep, that's even out.
Maybe it's Raja Bell or Gerald Wallace.
The windmill. The windmill by Wallace was nice on the break.
Oh, my God. That's what I said. Gerald Wallace at one point turned into Dominique Wilkins. And you had that really nice drive baseline windmill move. But, yeah, there's been a lot of fun highlights and a lot of fun moments over the last few games that we played. The second game that we played was... let's see. Oh, yeah, the booze for Vince Carter.
Yes.
The Orlando versus... What a nice touch.
Oh, for sure.
For that game. Every time Carter caught the ball, he was getting booed. It motivated me to shut him up. And I actually had a really good game with Vince. But, you had that spin move, drive baseline with DeRozan towards the beginning of the game and do a finger roll. I had a couple huge dunks with Vince Carter. I had a really big putback dunk with Dwight Howard. It was fun. Like, it's just a lot of fun moments that happened. And it doesn't work 100% perfect on your end, but hell, I mean, the fact that we can even play like this, I'm impressed.
It really is. And again, like you said, how easy it was to set up. So we definitely encourage everybody to give it a go. About the Vince Carter being booed, apparently they got in trouble for that, which is a shame. The NBA didn't like it, so they couldn't do it again. But the really cool thing about it, and I did a Way Back Wednesday video on this, is that he will get booed in Toronto if he's on any other team, including Orlando by default, and then Phoenix in the 2011 season roster update that came through when Elite 11 was cancelled, of course. But if you trade him back to Toronto, he doesn't get booed. It's not attached to Vince Carter being booed whenever he's in Toronto. There is actually a condition there in that script that recognizes, oh, he's back, he's a Raptor now, we like him again. That's cool too.
Yeah, see, that's the touch, right? That's the touch they used to have. That's the stuff they were trying. That's the authenticity portion. I did want to say this too, that my brother and I were talking about this, and we thought it was great, and then it kind of soured a second later. So in NBA Live 2004, they chant Larry when you're using Larry Bird in the fourth quarter, if you're playing well with him or whatever. So when Larry Bird was catching the ball in Live 2004, because you were playing a Legends game, the Celtics crowd was chanting Larry. And we were like, oh, my God, this is like specific. This is Larry's on, because we use the Celtics. They're like, Larry's on the Celtics. They're chanting Larry. Then the next possession, Magic had the ball, and they were chanting Magic. And we're just like, oh.
That's a shame, yeah.
The Celtics, that was a shame. So I was like, is the Celtics crowd really chant? Because we had Magic and Larry on the team, and they're chanting Magic. But anyway, when they were doing the Larry chant, we were like, this is so cool.
I didn't know they had that in Live 2004, so that's cool. I'll have to go back and play. I mustn't have played enough with the Legends teams on Live 04.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, Live 10, it's been fun. We definitely have a couple ideas for other gameplay videos related to NBA Live 10, like different matchups and whatnot. Any matchups you would like to see, from the community, let us know. I love doing community requests. I used to do them all the time for my channel.
Definitely, yeah.
Any games you want to see, too. Hey, Derek and Andrew, if you guys have it, put this, can you, do this matchup on this game or play this game, and we can try to get a matchup going. We still have to work out a few things. You might try a different controller, etc. But I mean, it works well enough for content creation, so that's good.
And it really has made as I said at the top of the show, NBA Live 10 has now become my new retro jam. I kind of go through these phases every so often where I'll pick up a game for a while and really get obsessed with it. And I had it out this weekend, actually getting some more screenshots for future articles. I had a couple of further Way Back Wednesday ideas for future articles that I needed screenshots for. Spent way too long getting a Jamison Curry screenshot that reflects one of the few shots of him in his 3.9 seconds of court time. So I spent way too long on getting that. I'll put that out on Twitter before the article comes out, actually. So look out for that if it's not already out by the time that you're listening to this. But yeah, it was definitely, it's been a lot of fun despite some teething problems, I suppose, and you've upgraded your internet connection and blistering fast speed now with uploads and downloads. So we've been trying a few things. You've done that. I'll be trying a few things from my end as well. But it's been very rewarding to try, even as I said, when there's been those moments of frustration. And to echo something that I said to you on by Instant Messenger, it does actually make me appreciate what 2K does with its servers as far as trying to get that low latency experience, to actually get that a proper online experience. That being said, 2K servers do have a lot of problems. That's my nice version of what I said about it at the time, because I have had a lot of issues, as many of us had, with 2K servers. But to try and get no delay as far as both input and receiving the data and everything, it's it's kind of like when you try and program something yourself. You do actually you do realize that it's not as easy as sometimes we think it might be, especially with their resources. But that being said, I do wish that they would fix their servers sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's important though for the game to also accommodate a poorer connection via appropriate attributes, tendencies, and gameplay, right? So remember, we tried to jump into a game of NBA 2K21 on PC when it first came out, and just the players, just let's not even count the lag, just the players going up and down the floor felt incredibly sluggish, and trying to make a pass felt incredibly delayed because of the heavy animations, right? Because they were just heavily canned animations and whatnot, and we were just dropping the ball constantly, and it just wasn't that fun. So even with lower latency issues where there maybe is a slight input delay, they could make the experience that much better by having better, more responsive, fast, fun gameplay out of the gates, like by default.
Agreed.
And I think the reason why NBA Live 10 works so well is because even though there might be a little bit of slight input delay on your end, the gameplay accommodates that delay. As in, the game is fun, it's reactive, it makes sense as far as moving on defense and offense, etc. And it's forgiving in many ways as well. So I think that's the thing that doesn't fly with me. Okay, connection issue, there's going to be connection issues, but let's look at the core gameplay and how that's affecting the experience. So, yeah. I just want to make sure that...
Yeah, I think you've touched on something interesting there as to why, because as we said, we've had problems with other games trying to get them to flow as well as Live 10. And we thought, okay, the earlier we go, the less intense it's going to be, to less resource intensive these games are because they're more primitive. It's going to have a better experience. Not necessarily the case. And that does come down to the games and how we're running them, I suppose. But Live 10, as you say, is designed in a way that input lag doesn't... It hasn't ruined the experience. And it's gotten to the point where obviously I am at a slight disadvantage because I have to kind of guess sometimes, because I am getting it... the delay of it being sent and then the added delay of me sending the input back. Sometimes it's hard to take advantage of a situation where normally I would make a very quick, crisp pass, or I'd see a gap, but by the time that I'm able to react to it, the gap is closed, or I'm not able to make that pass as quickly as I'd like because of the input delay, the input lag, which is still a problem with 2K Online as of 2K21, as the case may be sometimes. But apart from that, Live 10 does seem to accommodate that to a certain extent, more so than any other game we've played, which is interesting. But it's made Live 10 our game of choice, and I feel I've gotten a little bit better especially with jump shots. I know now that I can't hold it down as if I'm playing locally. I have to guess, and I think I'm getting the timing down to just a little bit better.
Well, we're shooting a very close percentage, actually. And if you actually watch the Lakers video, all your Fisher shots are on point. Like you're releasing it perfectly, which is why they're splashing. So no, and I think that updating my internet connection helped as well. I think it feels a little bit better on your end, which you even stated during the Celtics finals game, Celtics Lakers finals game. I do want to make a point though about the whole paint defense thing that you and I discussed. Paint defense is tough in that game anyway.
True.
And what ends up happening a lot of times is my input delay trying to jump and block a shot. I have it because that's the way the animations work. So trying to stop Tyson Chandler down low in that first quarter was impossible for me. Yes, folks, Tyson Chandler, the guy who's not great on offense, looked like Akeem Olajuwon for a good portion of the first quarter because when I tried to jump and block him, I was too slow to react. When I tried to, and the timing, the animation was too slow to match with the shot. So you were just putting shots up over me. If you get an offensive rebound and you're right under the hoop and I try to jump and block you, the chances of me actually stopping that are almost zero. They're very low. So we're both fighting that paint stuff. It's why Boris Dia looked like Barkley for a good stretch there because it's like I can't stop him right now. And I think that is a flaw in Live 10 is that dominance down low, regardless of really who you're using. So I think that's and the delay on defense where the offense gets an advantage. But if you really think about it, that was also a big issue with NBA 2K13. Not as much the delay, but that ridiculous dominance in the paint.
Definitely.
And around the hoop.
Definitely, yeah.
I killed the 2K, and not to go too on about this, but we had a NBA 2K13 season set up for me and my brothers and I. I set it up. I worked tireless hours just moving teams in and out to create my own URB. I was using the URB rosters made by Slim and Sco and whatnot. And the first game, I was using Westbrook in the 11-12 Thunder, and I did like 8 spin dunks that were unstoppable on the hardest level on my brother Mark. And just 8, it was like 8 in a row, no joke, on possessions. I just kept spinning and dunking on him, and we never played it again. So, because he was jumping to block it, and his hand was going through the ball, and it was just allowing me to dunk on him over and over and over and over again. So, unfortunately, all that work I put into that roster to get it ready for us to do an Ultimate Classic Teams type season just got destroyed by me doing those spin dunks. But yeah, that's my story about 2K13 and why we stopped playing it.
I do remember that with 2K13. Which was great when I was playing my career in 2K13 because if nothing else, I could just take my player in and dunk, and that's how I shot 60-70% one season. So yeah, that's
13 is a game. It's a great game.
That issue. Yeah, it's very even the best games, and I think we've touched on this before, that even the best games still have that one issue. We haven't seen that perfect game yet. We've seen some games that have been pretty damn good, but even the best of them. There's at least one issue you can pick out, even if it's just a weird bug or just a weird quirk of the gameplay. It's still you can still have a lot of fun with it, but it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, one of those games is 2K17, one of our favorite.
Indeed.
It's one of my favorite 2Ks of all time, maybe my favorite. It's up there. The pick and rolls are a little bit too easy against the CPU, and the brick wall defense is a little bit too much. So even a game like that, definitely that we love, has a few of those issues, teething problems, etc. But no, again, just to recap this and circle back, it has been really fun, and it's something that I look forward to, trying different games, seeing how well we can make it work, revisiting a title like NBA Live 10. I encourage people to check out those gameplay videos, those highlight videos.
Please do. Yes.
We really need another competitor in the space, and every time we boot up an NBA Live and actually have a good time with it, it's a little sad because
I know what you mean.
They should be there right now. They should be competing. They should be releasing games, and they could be competing. And we visit NBA Live 10, and I think you can agree, it's a whole what could have been type situation. So
has your opinion of Live 10 changed at all? I have to say that I'm enjoying it even more because I've always had a pretty high opinion of it, but I really, again, it's become my jam, and it's kind of become our jam at the moment with it. And we, not to get too off topic, but we played NBA Jam 2010 as well. interesting trying to play such a frenetic game with some lag. That was very hard to defend in that game, I can tell you. That was a bit of a struggle, but well, we might get that one going as well. But yeah, I've always felt very positive about Live 10, but I think I have a new appreciation for it now.
I feel better about it than I did before we started playing it. And the reason is because my brothers had moved on from NBA Live because, like I had stated, you couldn't do multi-team use in season mode or dynasty or anything like that. So we weren't able to like start seasons together, which is what we do. So we had moved on to 2K10. So we didn't spend a lot of time with NBA Live 10 back then, if any, really. I know that I had picked it up and played it a bit, but Mark and Nick didn't play it. So revisiting it and actually playing it against you, another human, and which brings out the best in the gameplay, has made me really appreciate what they did with the game. It feels a lot better against a human. The gameplay, it works really well on the emulator. Both of us own physical copies of the game, but it just works really well and looks really good on the emulator. It's missing depth, obviously the depth that I need with my brothers to get them to play it. But from a gameplay perspective and atmosphere perspective, like between the lines gameplay perspective, I've definitely grown a new appreciation for it, and it's been really fun. Like using Curry in that Warriors team was fun.
Even in the jerseys? Even in the gold standard jerseys?
Those jerseys look absolutely terrible. They look like really cheap shirts that you'd buy at like Savers. They probably don't have one of those around here, around there, but something you'd buy like for $5 off the rack, like a knockoff shirt. But hey, you know what? It wasn't about that. It was about the personnel. But it's also kind of cool that you were able to just like put that code in. I want people to realize how cool Parsec is. So just really quick, Andrew was able to, because basically he connects to my machine. Like he can see my desktop. He can see everything that I'm doing. But he was able to take control of NBA Live 10, even though I was hosting it, put in the code to get the appropriate Bobcats jerseys, the cheat code. We love cheat codes, right? The cheat code.
Yeah.
To get the Bobcats jerseys and those Warriors jerseys, and then we were able to play with them and upload the highlights. I mean, how cool is that? The game's like 11 years old, 12 years old, and we're putting in cheat codes and playing, and you're on the other side of the world. I think that's
it's wild. Cool. It's wild, yeah. It's funny to say because I've obviously played a lot of online team play, which is a pretty advanced feature that I can jump into this virtual world and join other players. But just to be able to set that up ourselves through a freely available program, which, as you said, 5 minutes or so at most to install, to download, install, and set up and everything, and it's all free. Again, I must agree, brand new appreciation for the game myself. It's becoming one of my favorites. I'm looking forward to playing more games, and obviously we're going to be trying to get that the lag as low as possible, and we'll try some other things, and as we said, but. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that and to playing more games. Just playing more games with you, but obviously we're making content about it as well. And I do encourage everybody to check that out. And you know what? Go back and give NBA Live 10 another look. It deserves it. It's worth it.
It will make you listen. I'll just say this to gamers: find a way to give 2K10 and Live 10 look side by side and see what Live was doing different than 2K at the time, and see how well it held up. You'd be surprised. So all those people that say, well, Live's been dead, they've been getting killed by 2K for years, go put those games side by side and really look at them for what they are. Get on the sticks and whatnot. It's definitely worth revisiting NBA Live 10. It's been an eye-opener, honestly, this week doing this, and we'll definitely have more games, moving forward. There's other games that I want to try, obviously. I'd love to get a game of 2K8 with you on that crowd cam. The isometric cam, which is like mimics NBA Live, the old camera. We tried to boot up NBA Live 98. It didn't work that well, but I'd like to finish a game with you on NBA Live 98 on that cam as well. So there's definitely a lot of things that we want to do. But I encourage people, like you said, check out NBA Live 10. It's worth it.
And give Raja Bell a go as well.
And no Carlton for Rasheed Wallace. Come on.
That was weird.
But that was weird. Like, why have him do that? I mean,
I'm giving him a technical on that one.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, did you see that Gerald Wallace was limping after that windmill dunk you did?
I did, yeah. The highlights. Yeah. It's funny because there is an unused injury mechanic in Live 10, which again speaks to the depth or the lack thereof that we were talking about. But yeah, sometimes players will take a hard hit and the commentary will acknowledge it. Marvel say, "Oh, we took a hard hit there. It looks to be limping," and they will be limping or maybe holding a back or holding a head after the shot. But then they just shake it off because there's no injury mechanic. But again, what could have been? Because there was clearly something there that was supposed to be proper injuries, and not just injuries based on fouls. Because Live's injuries were always, it had to be a shooting foul, either the defender or the offensive player on the collision getting a foul. But there were fouls, there were injuries rather on contact, obviously, but not on foul calls necessarily. It's a shame that didn't come through.
Right, because Gerald Wallace would have been injured on that play. Because you drove baseline, there was no foul, you did a nice windmill dunk, and then as you were walking back, he was limping.
Just came down hard, yeah.
Yeah, that's an instance. Right, so really good cutscenes in that game, too. Like, overall. Like, I don't know.
Check it out, people, yeah. That's, if our enthusiastic recap of what we've been doing this week isn't enough, see for yourself. I think people have a brand new appreciation, as we do, for NBA Live 10.
Absolutely. Also, I want to point something out. Send us your videos. Sounds ridiculous, but send us your gameplay.
Post them in the forum, yeah.
NBA Live, yeah, not just NBA Live 10. Other games, like, I don't know. I'd like to get to a point where maybe the NLSC showcases other people's gameplay or something like that. I'd put together the highlights. You've seen my setup. It works. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of opportunity there. I think that Parsec opens up a world of opportunity, too. Maybe there's people on the NLSC that want to play against each other. Maybe somebody makes a thread of NLSC matchups and they connect on Parsec and we display the highlights. There's just a lot of opportunities. It's basically limitless what we could end up doing.
Indeed. So once again, check out Live 10 and stay tuned for some more content from us. And from one fun thing to another, Derek, it's time for the mailbag.
Yeah, a lot of questions, actually. And we're going to have to push quite a few of them to future shows. But again, great questions. Thank you for interacting with the show and keep them coming because this is a segment that we can truly rely on every single week, and that's because of you. So thank you.
Absolutely. And it's always great to get those questions each and every week. Yes, we do have a bit of a glut at the moment, but we do not mind at all. We will be getting to those in due course. But our first question this week comes from KidCash202, KidCash202 on Twitter, asks, do you think our attitudes about modern basketball games would be different if we avoided the internet completely? I often wonder how folks that aren't as deep into this view these releases. This is something I've thought about before, especially when it comes to sim gaming and how a lot of us would get really in depth of what we wanted to see as far as how much realism and everything, and sometimes we got a bit of a rude shock when the games tried to give us what we wanted or what we thought we wanted. But I think this speaks to internet culture in general, Derek, that to a certain extent we are in a bubble. The hardcore fans that are just part of the discourse, and sometimes that discourse can be very negative or cynical. We've been part of that ourselves. I think we've felt it sometimes when we've thought, okay, we need to lighten up a bit, or certainly I have. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that it is a big part of internet culture, not just with basketball gaming, but gaming in general, hobbies in general. So I do wonder about that as well, whether people that are just playing the games but not really getting online to talk about them, how they feel about it.
Our feelings would be completely different in a lot of ways for the fact that the games wouldn't be designed the same. If the internet didn't exist, and that means that online play wouldn't be such a focus, right? You wouldn't see all the stuff about builds, all the commentary about builds, all the clickbait videos, all of that stuff. And, a lot of the commentary that actually makes you kind of pissed off. Like, you wouldn't see any of that. What would end up happening is the games would be focused more on the authenticity element, the NBA portion. There would be more focus on marketing that, through your television and whatnot, and by other means. There would be more of a focus on another benefit would be there would be more of a focus on going over a friend's house, calling up a friend and saying, hey, come on over, let's play. And there would be that enhanced experience that we were just talking about, with co-op. Obviously you're in Australia and here I am in New Hampshire, USA. But, it would be more of that, in person though, experience. And I think that that's still, the ideal and most fun way to play. So it would help the human interaction element, like the actual human interaction element, not like with a headset on and whatnot. So I think that, I think our outlook on games, I feel like I sound like Chris Webber right now because I'm rambling. I think our outlook on games, these basketball titles, would be different for the main fact that the games wouldn't be being made the same.
Well, I think he's still talking about the games still having an online component. He's talking about people not coming online to talk about them. Like people who they'll go out and buy the game every year, but they're not getting into forums or social media or Reddit or anything. They're just playing the games. Are they not getting caught up in the discourse?
No, the experience is still the same. No, because the on-court frustrations are still the same. So no, I don't think that it would make people feel much better about the games. In fact, I think people that do have these frustrations with the games, wouldn't have a place to sound off, right? They wouldn't have, et cetera, if they weren't on the internet and didn't have these outlets to sound off on the issues with the games. They wouldn't be able to vent that frustration. So the things that they're frustrated with, if the gameplay was exactly the same and the connection issues were exactly the same and all of that stuff, then I think it's that those people would just possibly be even more frustrated.
I think the frustration would be there. Yeah. I do think about it because obviously there with professional wrestling there is what they call the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, which I have dabbled in as well elsewhere on the internet, discussing my love of that particular pseudo sport, and it's often come up in discussions there that compared to the overall audience of WWE or AEW or any other wrestling promotion, that the people that go online to talk about it and what they want to see in the storylines and which of their favorites they want to see win titles and win matches and be featured performers, there's a lot more complaints about that. There's a lot of focus on the meta, what's going on behind the scenes, rather than necessarily the show that's being put on within discussions in the internet wrestling community. So it's been brought up a couple of times in discussion about there's a lot of people who just watch wrestling, not as many as they used to be actually, but nevertheless, there's a lot of people that just watch it week to week. The numbers are there to prove that, and they don't come online to talk or to complain about it. They just watch the product and take it as it is. Which, to your point, they probably do have their criticisms naturally, and episodes they don't like or wrestlers that they don't like and that they're supposed to like and don't. That's a problem with wrestling when the baby face is come off as the villain instead of the heel. But there is that talk that the IWC is very hypercritical, and gaming communities can be like that as well. So if somebody is just playing just playing a My NBA or My League offline, and they're just playing it, they're not coming online, they're not really bothering with the online scene, is there a chance that they might be enjoying the game, just taking it at face value? Obviously, 10 million people, or so 8 to 10 million people buy NBA 2K every year. So there's probably a lot of people that are just enjoying the game and not really bothering about the things that we're talking about, which is, to us seems weird because we're so passionate about it. But there probably are some people who are just not really getting involved in the discourse, or maybe not even playing online. Maybe they're only playing online, or if they're playing online, they're only jumping online to see a build video, and then they don't bother with the discussion or anything. They're just back to the game. I do wonder about that.
I mean, think about how many people, though, are not on social media. Very few. And think about how many kids are not on social media. Very few. So I think it's incredibly telling and helpful to see what I've talked about. We talked about the reception on NBA 2K18, going from Metacritic scores, on 2K17 and prior from, a 6 or a 7 or more positive reviews and positive feedback to like a 1 or a 0.8 or something like that. And then you see the difference in reaction and comments under these threads where a developer will say something, or somebody who's an influencer will say something about the game, or they'll ask a question or something like that, or somebody there's so many different names. I'm not going to name all of them, and then you see the negative reaction to the game a lot more. I think that's telling. I don't think that it can be easily said that, well, maybe there's a lot of people that just are not complaining. because you can see trends. You can see what people are complaining about, what's being complained about the most, the commonalities, etc. So I don't know. I think that there's obviously people that enjoy the games, but I think that there's people more frustrated and burnt out than ever on 2K. Well, I think you can agree with that.
I do. From a personal standpoint, I do think even if I wasn't a content creator, if I wasn't doing this podcast or my articles or discussing on social media and in a forum, I think I would have the same complaints. I just wouldn't be voicing them. So I think the frustration is definitely there that people are having. But I mean, maybe some of the discourse, but that they avoid is that they have a more positive outlook because they're not worrying about this or that. It reminds me again of the discussions of sim gamers versus more casual players, or not necessarily arcade players, but a more casual approach to sim. Those of us that were really hardcore into wanting the games to be as realistic as possible always had the complaints that more casual gamers were like, oh, you know, I'm just enjoying it for what it is. So I'm not saying that's necessarily neither is right or wrong. It's your personal preference, but it is interesting. Sometimes I think internet discourse can skew negatively. I do think sometimes, but at the same time, we've also seen a lot of 2K discourse skew very unnaturally positively, or we've seen influencers trying to steer it in a too positive direction to the point where people are discouraged from voicing their complaints. So it's kind of weird in that respect.
Yeah, well, a red flag is a red flag. If you go from releasing a game and you're saying mostly positive reception online on the various social media platforms, etc., from actual users on the ground, I'm not talking about paid reviewers. If you go from a positive, mostly positive reception, excitement, etc., to woefully negative on the following releases, and you're a developer, how do you look at that? That's a red flag, right?
Yeah.
If you're the suits and you see that, that's a red flag, etc. So it's good that people have a voice. It is good that we do have the internet and there's people out there doing this, because it shows trends. It shows the burnout. It shows maybe this is an area where the game needs to improve, and hey, we need competition in the space or something new because there is burnout here. But I want you to go back to the way I originally answered the question, because that's the way I took it at first, is let's say we didn't have the internet at all. I want you to think about, and we could do a whole show on this, how the games would possibly be made without the internet today.
It would be very franchise-focused.
How they would be promoted, right, how they would be promoted, what would be the focus modes, how the gameplay would be focused on, how different the game might be. So I actually don't regret answering it that way, because it's something that you can really think about. Because with the constant push to online, to making builds, to that individual player control, all of that stuff, think about how wildly different basketball gaming would be without that online element.
Gaming in general, yeah, absolutely. The second part where he mentions, often wondering how folks that aren't as deep into it view the releases. I'm guessing people that aren't online, as you said, most people are online in some capacity these days, whether they're frequently posting or whatever. They're still connected. They're still checking out the discourse, checking out the build videos, or as the case may be, and how to win at my team, whatever. So I suppose people that aren't really into that scene are likewise not really experiencing the online elements of the game, whether it's online multiplayer or my team connected experiences, whatever. So yeah, it just comes down to whether they enjoy the game at face value, I suppose. But it is an interesting thing to ponder, because obviously they're not talking about it online, so it's hard to say what their opinions are, I suppose.
It doesn't make the skating go away.
That's
it
true.
Doesn't make defensive lapses go away. It doesn't make being able to just run wide and go in for a free dunk go away. It doesn't make the defensive logic where they just let you run by them because they're focusing on another player go away. It doesn't make the canned animations go away. It doesn't make the heavily delayed passing because you're being sucked into other players go away. It doesn't make the dropping the ball when you face up go away, just like
trying to like do a move after a face up, just randomly dropping the ball. It doesn't make the body steals go away. So that's the point that I guess that's how I'll answer it. The frustration would still be there, but they just wouldn't have the same outlet to voice it. And it's a very good possibility they wouldn't be heard. So that is kind of like my answer to the question. Honestly, I don't think it doesn't change the frustration. If anything, it might even add to it. Who knows? So,
and there might be some people out there that are just taking the game at face value, that they're not really worrying about the realism or the accuracy as we do. We are probably more prone to do it because we are so passionate that we are involved in the discourse and involved in the community with both from a discussion standpoint and a content creation standpoint. But there's probably some people out there that as not worrying about it as much. But to your point, I think it is great that we do speak out and that we do have the platform, because for many years getting in touch with developers was hard. It was who has a connection, obviously, and now that they are for better or worse sometimes more accessible, we can at least give the feedback more directly.
Right, exactly, and it's nice to have that. But I will say this in response to what he said. One of the problems is feeling the frustration of not being heard when you put it out there. And I think that's really underrated, and I think I can agree where that one problem is you'll comment on an influencer's thread or on the main video game thread or to the main video game account, people that work on the game, etc. And you'll say, hey, listen, this is a problem with the game. Why are you promoting this and not talking about this? Why are you silent on this? And getting no response can definitely add to frustration. I totally agree with that. So that is one downside. And honestly, that's more often the case, right? The more often the case is you feel like you're speaking to a brick wall or
yelling at the wind.
Not,
not
being listened to and yelling at the wind. So I agree with that. I think that's one of the frustrations of internet feedback, etc.
And of course, being online allows you to check out mods as well, which is a big part of what we do.
Yeah, there's a lot of good mods going on the NLSC, and people need to check those out.
So thank you once again for that question, and moving on to the second question, it comes from Sega Geek Navarre in the forum, and asks us, in Live 14, did we happen to see the hilarious character model of Giannis Antetokounmpo? Leads to ask, what are some of the most off-character models of players that we've seen in NBA Live or NBA 2K? Oh boy, has there been a few. And yes, I actually had to go back and look at that Giannis, because I'd forgotten about it, but that was his first season, and wow, they really did him dirty. Derek, that was not a good Giannis in Live 14.
Was he ever bald like that?
I don't think so.
I mean, that doesn't look anything like him. So I think one of the things, there's a couple puzzling things about NBA Live 14. They had that long development cycle. I know that there was fumbling as far as like who would work on the game. They changed teams, etc. But to come back with Live 14 and have so many faces be off, and then the lack of face scanning, because so many players just look completely unrecognizable. That was pretty disappointing. It's the opposite of the way you expected them to come back. Russell Westbrook in Live 14 looks absolutely terrible. It is one of the worst faces I've ever seen. He doesn't look human a lot of the time on the floor as far as like his face, his facial expressions. To give them credit, when Russell Westbrook was the Live 16 cover athlete, they really did an amazing job on Westbrook. It looks exactly like it. I think it's a great Westbrook. They got his signature shot right, all that stuff. But yeah, there were some really poor faces in Live 14. One of the worst faces I've ever seen, and I talked to you about this, for a player in video games, and it's shocking because he was the original cover athlete, was Allen Iverson's face in NBA 2K16. And I believe it was the same one in 2K15, but the one I remember the most is 2K16. My God, that looks absolutely nothing like Allen Iverson. There is no feature other than his hair, which is gray, by the way. They didn't make it black. It's gray in the release. In his body doesn't look right. I believe he was missing his tattoos as well on release, like some of his tattoos. Was so disrespectful the way they made Allen Iverson in 2K16. It's one of the worst, in my opinion, in the history.
I remember you mentioning that, and I remember going back and seeing that it was rather rather subpar, to say the least. I was trying to think of who I thought Giannis looked like, or the alleged Giannis in Live 14 looked like, should we say. Terry Crews, maybe?
That's the closest. I mean, I don't... It looks nothing like Giannis. Like, if you showed me that screenshot and he wasn't in that jersey, I would have absolutely no idea who that was.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense. I don't get it. They released that. That's what's crazy.
Yeah,
that was released.
Didn't update it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because I've played Live 10, obviously, recently, I was going back through some of the old rosters, because I have a few different rosters saved from the updates that they released throughout the 2010 season. And the original Patty Mills, the final version wasn't great, but the first one was too light-skinned, and he had grey hair. Goran Dragic in that game is, even after all the updates, is just, I don't know who it is, it's just a generic white guy. It is not Dragic at all. Even Jeff Teague, it doesn't look right. So some of the rookies and sophomores weren't looking right in that game. So Live 10 had a few. Dirk Nowitzki over the years, a lot of games, Live and 2K have never had a really good Dirk Nowitzki.
No, they haven't. The best Dirk Nowitzki, in my opinion, is actually on 2K17. But otherwise, like in 2K14, they had, like, we called him the Porcupine Dirk. He had, like, this blonde porcupine-looking fro.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really weird hair for him. So he had that in that game. And then the other ones either make him look too old, or he's just missing Dirk features entirely. He doesn't look good for the 0203 Dirk that they have in the game either. There's just been some really puzzling choices on faces. Jamal Crawford has had a couple games where he looked absolutely nothing like himself. And then the people in the forum were feverishly trying to make updates to him. David Robinson has looked mostly terrible since 2K18. He lacks a neck. He lacks muscle. His eyes are sometimes close to crossed. He doesn't... his face doesn't look even close to like David Robinson. He is in sore need of an update, Razor, if you're listening. Or anybody else for 2K. David Robinson is in sore need of an update. Modders have tried. They've made him look a little bit better, but just some puzzling ones. I don't like the new Karl Malone that's in NBA 2K21. Not only is his body terrible, he lacks muscle. Karl Malone lacks size and muscle. But his face, and there's like lazy elements of it. Like the 0304 Lakers version should be bald and he's not. Like they just put the Jazz Malone on the Lakers and we're like, hey, there you go. But yeah, face-wise, that David Robinson's not very good.
One just came to mind that obviously a player near and dear to your heart, D. Brown.
Oh my God, yeah. That's just not a good cyberface for D. Brown. Somebody, I think it was Calvin Chan, who's working on the 2K19 roster for PC, the retro single seasons. He made a perfect D. Brown. He just looks awesome. And I actually converted it over to the 2K17 rosters that I do. By the way, we put that on, and it wasn't working great for you. But how awesome is that mod?
Oh, it's fantastic.
The retro single
yeah,
season.
love it, yeah.
I mean, the accuracy. I mean, I had a couple of sweet dunks with you on Tom Chambers before we quit. But just the courts, the jerseys, it all fits.
That was the 1990
really
mod that we were playing with, 89-90. And the NBA on CBS, scoreboard and logos, and the wipes. Fantastic. Spot on.
That was made by Sticky Fingers. He did a really good job with that, with the NBA on CBS stuff. And as people know, the 80s presentation was the CBS presentation. So that looks really cool and adds to the immersion. Just the lighting in NBA 2K19 services those single-season rosters. Like, it just looks really cool.
It really does.
Yeah.
Thinking of some other faces, Joakim Noah in 2K9 and 2K10 is a bit ordinary, and that I use that in the Australian sense of the negative sense of ordinary, a bit lackluster, shall I say. Kevin Durant in 2K9 is also strangely got a very strangely stretched face. I think I've shared that screenshot before with you. I think I might have actually posted it in the forum or on Twitter. Somebody else that I was thinking of, I think Jason Williams in Live 08 was a bit off as well.
Yeah, I want to point out too that Baron Davis in 2K6 was terrible. I showed a screenshot of it. Some of the faces in 2K6 are way off. I mean, just you can tell that obviously they didn't do any face scanning for these guys. And I don't want to be hard on NBA Live 98. I love Live 98. We tried to revisit it. I played it recently, and my brother was loving watching it. I think it's a better gameplay and overall experience than Live 2000. Excuse me, Live 2001 and Live 2002. But man, those faces in Live 98 kill me.
It's the first 3D live with first faces, and yes, some of them are very primitive, to say the least.
They look like clowns, yeah. And what happened was if you actually take a look at NBA Live 99, they did such an improvement on the faces.
Huge.
Like the faces in Live 90, it's huge. It's one of the biggest jumps. I think people should go back and check that out or look up screenshots or gameplay videos. The cyberface jump from Live 98 to Live 99 is massive. One of the biggest in history, to be honest with you. They did such a good job with Live 99. And actually you know what hurt Live 99, not to go on a tangent, but Antoine Walker's motion capture. I think that hurt the game. Like Antoine Walker was the cover athlete for NBA Live 99, and so the game adopted his shooting motion.
And very high release, yeah.
Yeah, and like I think it did other motion capture with him and whatnot. And I think it hurt the gameplay a little bit. My brothers and I talk about it sometimes, and his release did not feel great in that game, and shooting is so important. But, yeah, didn't stop him from shooting a million threes in real life. But wouldn't even be considered a million threes today.
No.
Back then it was, yeah.
Would have add that 4-point line that they always talked about. Of course, it's not NBA Live or NBA 2K, but Fox Sports NBA Basketball 2000 we're always going to mention here for some interesting-looking faces.
Ugh. It's hard to even bring up a game like that because it's that poorly executed.
But you compare it to Live 2000. Like, the tech was there. Live 2000 its faces are amazing.
Yeah, we talked about that, by the way. These Live 2000 showcases them, too. Like on the lineup screen, and you're like, oh my God, that is Paul Pierce. Like if somebody said to me, who is that? And he wasn't wearing a green jersey and it was just his face, I'd say that's Paul Pierce, right? So it's not like they didn't have the technology, but maybe not as much of a budget, maybe not the right minds on the project, or artists on the project, etc. Fox Sports NBA Basketball is forgettable. Let's just put it that way. In its entirety, it's a pretty forgettable title.
Or memorable for the wrong reasons, as the case may be. So,
right, exactly.
But those are some of the ones that jump out immediately to me. Yeah, I mean, there's been some great faces over the years, but there's been a few. The fact that I think Live 2005 is the only Dirk, because I did play that recently, that really stands out as that was a pretty good one. But they either get his hair wrong, or there's something off about his face or his eyes. There's been a couple of odd Jason Kidds as well over the years, some kind of squashed heads, or that just hasn't really got the head shape right. So it's often comes down to that, is not getting that skull, that model properly done. And the early games like Alive 98, even through to about, I think, 2003, a lot of them were using the same, a variety of head shapes and just kind of making the face fit on the selection of head shapes. So once players actually got their individual head shapes, they were a lot better, but we still got some models that were a bit off.
Yeah, like, I mean, Kobe in 2K10 doesn't look good, and he was the cover athlete. Like, if you go back and look at 2K10 and you look at the Kobe Bryant's face, it's not very good. There's some, and even in recent games, Kobe hasn't looked that great out of the gate. Admittedly, he looks a little bit better in 2K21 next gen, but his head is still too big for his body, and he's still kind of missing that Kobe look. But it is better than what we've had in the past. But yeah, I mean, if we wanted to, I mean, maybe we'll make a thread about this on the NLSC and just show screenshots of some of the worst faces, because I'd love to get that Iverson out there, and the lack of improvement on David Robinson, etc.
That's definitely worth doing. But on a more fun note, I've thought about having maybe on Twitter, on maybe Facebook, but certainly Twitter, just putting out putting out the texture files from some of the games circa 2004, 2005, and just seeing if people can guess from the texture file, because some of them, they look fine in game, but the way they're actually spread out as a texture, some of them, some of the players are like, that's him. So it would be a fun guessing game, I think, to actually extract the texture and just put that up there as a just to put the texture out there and just to see if people can guess some of the players. Because some of them you'd think, who is that? Without it wrapped around the head shape, some of them, especially 2004, because 2004 was kind of a step back from the faces, if you remember. So, yeah, it'd be kind of a fun guessing game, I think.
Two things with that. One, a player we forgot to mention, the Larry Bird in 2K18 is one of the worst faces in video game history. I've posted the screenshot of that, and people couldn't believe how poor it looked. It doesn't look anything like Larry Bird. I don't know who that is.
That does look like a plumber. That just looks like a random plumber.
It's like actually a plumber.
Yeah.
So Larry Bird's had some pretty poor faces, and the one in 2K21 isn't much better. His body isn't even close to right. He just his face, it's not very good even in next gen NBA 2K21 now. But I did want to say something about that texture thing. So NBA 2K15 has a lot of modding limitations, and that's the way you actually have to find players in NBA 2K15 Explorer, because they don't, we didn't really have like a cyberface ID list, etc. I mean, I suppose we could have used the one from like 2K14, but the way that I was identifying players is bringing up the face color texture in the if editor for NBA 2K15 Explorer and identifying the face. So I was like, oh, this looks like Patrick Ewing. Let's put the PNG file and the face file together and overwrite another player in the default roster and see if I was right. Is that Patrick Ewing? And I was pretty good at getting him right. But yeah, that's how we had to identify faces for 2K15 in the files, is by looking at that face color texture.
It was a bit easier with the player package names for live back in the day, because we'd have the first two letters of the first name and the first 5 letters of the surname, so it was a bit easier to find players listed in the files. That being said, I will send you, after we finish recording, I will send you one of the textures from Live 2004, and next week we'll see if you get it.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So thank you for the question, Sega Geek Navarre. Always appreciate the questions from you and from Kid Cash, and we have some others from The Ball Pundit and a couple of other people on Twitter and so forth. So thank you. Please keep them coming. Podcast at nb-live.com is where you can email them, or you can send them to us on social media, which we'll be reading out shortly, or in our forum. Basically, any way you can get in touch with us, Derek. We want to hear from people.
Absolutely. I love the interaction. We love the interaction on our recent highlight videos that we've been posting. Tell us what you would like to see as well. We wouldn't mind accommodating some of those requests. But just definitely keep interacting with the show. It keeps us motivated each and every week.
And with that being said, we are at the end of this week's show, episode number 375 of the NLSC podcast. We thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. The NLSC podcast comes out each and every week on the NLSC, which is nb-live.com. We're also on all the major podcatching apps and platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, to name just a few. On those platforms, search for NLC Podcast, look for our logo, that will be us. And of course, please feel free to leave us a review, hopefully a positive one, on Apple Podcasts. And with that being said, Derek, let's plug our socials.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll record Holding Court with D for 3 episode 17 soon. Hopefully I can find the time and space to do that. Otherwise, please get to me on Twitter at D4384. That's where I'm the most active. And please follow my new handle at D43G. The G stands for gaming. I've been more active on my YouTube, uploading gameplay videos of Live 10 and whatnot. Definitely tune into my YouTube channel, D43. I'm on the NLSC as a team member over there, and I've been making faces. You can get to me on there, D43. And I'm also on Instagram at D4384.
Once again, I am Andrew in the forum, and I have various features that come out each and every week. Monday Tip-Off, Wayback Wednesday, and Friday 5. By the name, I'm sure you can guess which days they come out on. And of course, this NLC podcast every Sunday. On Twitter, I am Andrew NLSC. The NLSC itself is on social media. On Facebook and Twitter, we are the NLSC. On Instagram, we are NLSC Basketball. Our YouTube is NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com. for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for joining us. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.